a lot of co-design processes don't actually give people an opportunity to say no or opt out. They assume that people are going to be willing, or that the premise is important enough that it needs to be done. And examples I'll share from research, which is kind of counter to what CBRC does as a community-based research organizations, but we see other projects where everything is kind of fully baked, and it's sort of like you can get people to participate. And I'm interested for Megan to share feedback too around research and CRE's work, because what we see is sort of like, oh, if you decide not to participate, they just go on ahead with somebody else. You know, any kind of feedback to say like, maybe there's a problem with this research design. At QT BIPOC Saga, we receive emails all the time that sort of like, we're doing a research project on trans youth. And then I ask questions to be like, are there any trans youth involved? Are there BIPOC people involved? No, unfortunately not. But we're going to provide a $50 honorarium for someone to talk about their trauma, you know, similar to what was being said in the first panel. And after saying, here are all the concerns, it's like radio silence. So that's a concern for me. I think the pedagogical approach, the assumption that people that you're co-designing with don't actually have the knowledge that you think is needed, and you need to, it's, you know, the empty vessel stuff. That is a huge failure that I think people don't recognize they're perpetuating all the time. And really, it's really that there's white supremacy in all parts of how we work, including how we think about time and timelines, like has already been said, but also thinking about how people show up, and that idea of professionalism and certain kinds of people being valued in the process. Like if you're messy or you're mad identified like I am, and that maybe plays out in a particular way, you're a bad participant, maybe you're not going to be allowed to come to the next co-design session, or the things that you're saying are actually not valid. Thinking about institutional resistance in the region of PO, where I do most of my work, you know, there's been lots of conversations about abolition. And when body cameras as a solution was kind of introduced in the summer of 2020, for the first time ever, a huge number of people wrote into the PO Police Services Board deputations, the most that they've ever had in the history of existing as a board. Like 100 people wrote in, which like never happens. And there was just like no engagement with the content. And one of the board members who's appointed by the province said, well, it really seems like everybody just, maybe there's like a common source for this narrative. And then they just stopped engaging. Fast forward to the fall, and they say, oh, we need to actually reopen the engagement process, but they didn't count any of what was already said. So I'm just thinking about like who gets included, who gets framed as a disruptor or shit disturber, and therefore isn't allowed into the process. And I would like to believe that really the way that we could do this work more meaningfully is to challenge all of these white supremacist ideas about who's important, who's valuable, what work matters, and who actually gets the credit for it.